This week hasn't been too great for the altcoins, but there's one alt, Cronos, the CRO token, that went up massively, and that's because of an establishment of a potential treasury company in cooperation with Donald Trump, or Trump Media to be more specific. We've talked about the news in prior videos on this channel. We are not going to dive into that in that much detail here. But I've been covering Cronos regularly on this channel. The first two videos a long time ago didn't get that much attention, but recently with the rally of Cronos, we discussed the on-chain metrics and we discussed the legal setup that might establish more purchases of the asset in the future. Now, all markets are driven by news and by fundamental developments, and obviously there is some important things happening for Cronos. However, at the same time, attention also matters. As in, if there's a lot of people talking about a particular asset, there tend to be also more purchases and the price tends to be elevated. Looking at both factors does make sense. Looking at relative valuations does make sense. Because if currently all the attention, all the capital is on one asset, it might move towards the next asset just tomorrow. The question is always about opportunity cost. As in, is Cronos still cheap, relatively speaking, to other cryptocurrencies? What we're seeing here is the Cronos price relative to the market cap of all the alts. So it's Cronos divided by the others market cap. This is a chart you probably haven't seen on other channels, but it shows nice insights. There are brief moments of a lot of attention and price appreciation, and then over time that attention fades and moves to other cryptocurrencies, and so Cronos then tends to underperform the market. Currently, we are, of course, again at a time of heightened attention. Now, Cronos is another layer 1 blockchain, so a smart contract platform very similar to Ethereum. Ethereum is the largest of all of them, and so looking at Cronos relative to Ethereum in terms of performance does make sense. They are pretty much direct competitors. And very long term, Cronos did not do better than Ethereum. It actually, even after the recent pump, underperformed Ethereum by 69%. Now, in the last 2 years, things have stabilized, but interestingly enough, those tops and those bottoms, they align quite precisely. And we are not very low on that trading range, unfortunately. This is a potential loss versus Ethereum of roughly 50%. Now we can also have a look at other centralized exchange tokens as potential competitors, because Cronos is not just its own blockchain, it's also launched by Crypto.com. Very similar to the BNB token that was launched by Binance. BNB is the largest of such tokens in terms of market cap because there's also a lot of usage of the build and build blockchain. It's still more than 10 times larger than Cronos, and Cronos with that recent pump became number 2. And here's Cronos relative to BNB. BNB did outperform Cronos long term. There's lower lows along the way. And the recent pump did not necessarily bring us to historical heights. There's still the chance we could see a secondary pump, which is almost 120% outperformance from here. But the overall trend is pretty clear, as in BNB tends to do better than Cronos. Now, why is that the case? Yes, BNB is doing quite well, but it's not just the usage of the platform that's causing that outperformance of BNB over Cronos long term. The real issue with Cronos long term is tokenomics, as in the CRO token is inflating over time. There's more and more tokens hitting the market, and the demand does not outpace the supply. Thus, we see the underperformance. This is the long-term Cronos price. At the peak, we were at 69 cents. So that's almost 3 times the current price. But have a look at the long-term market cap. The market cap is close to 10 billion. If we 3x that, that's at 30 billion. So much larger than the all-time market cap, close to 17. In other words, the supply from 2022 to today must have roughly doubled. The market cap is close to the all-time high. The price is so far away from that. It's simply long-term selling pressure that causes the underperformance versus the other altcoins. And that's why whenever we don't have that much attention on Cronos, we tend to see the price just bleeding over time. Now, of course, if there's a lot of usage of the Cronos blockchain, even an inflating token supply isn't really that much of a problem. We just need to see sufficient growth. But unfortunately, we do not see that yet for Cronos. Will this acquisition plan by Trump Media change this dynamic? Maybe, who knows? Right now, we do not see any increase in activity on the blockchain following the announcement. Here is the total value locked of the Cronos blockchain over time in US dollars. But a lot of that recent increase here, that was just the price of CRO going up. because of the speculation around the Trump acquisition. Have a look at the total value locked in Cronos though. This is very low. In the last 3 years, the usage of the blockchain measured in CRO just went down. Here's the app revenue over time measured in Cronos. It's pretty flat. Maybe there is slight increases over time, but definitely in the last 1.5 years, we did not see any real change. Here's the decentralized exchange trading volume, again measured in CRO. Not much growth, not much shrinkage. In US dollars, there is some shrinkage though, because Cronos didn't do that well long term. And so the question then becomes about the short term. How much longer could potentially the attention continue to go up? How much higher could Cronos go? What we're seeing here are statistics around the short-term capital, the bets on the price, the perpetual futures. Most traders bet on rising prices of Cronos. Most of the time, we tend to have a positive funding rate. The longs have to pay the shorts to get more exposure to Cronos. The amount of bets on the Cronos price has spiked massively though. It's now at 150 million, and in the past, when it went up like this, it tended to deflate afterwards and bring the price with it. So there is a correlation between the amount of bets on an asset and the spot price. Arbitrage bots make sure that the perpetual futures and the spot market are somewhat aligned in terms of pricing. Of course, with the rally, it was mainly the shorts that got liquidated. Currently, the market is somewhat in balance. There's not too many liquidations happening. But really, the fundamental question behind all of this is, will Cronos become another treasury asset similar to Bitcoin and Ethereum? Or is this just a cooperation agreement between Trump Media and Crypto.com that won't necessarily spill over to other people getting interested in buying CRO long term? I think the cooperation agreement story is the more likely one. This here is the amount of Bitcoin that's held by treasury companies and also the amount of Bitcoin that's held by the ETFs. So the ETFs is the line in purple and the treasury companies is this colored area. Over here, we've got the Ethereum ETF plus treasury company balance. And of course, this goes up and this is great for both assets, for Bitcoin and for Ethereum. But what will happen with Cronos long term? Again, this is Cronos relative to Ethereum. I think the likelihood of the price deflating again is not low at all. We have seen this several times in the past after rallies like this. There is a chance for a secondary short-term squeeze because we have seen a similar story as well. Just have a look at this. If people shorted Cronos too early here, they got wrecked with a secondary short squeeze just to then get the price deflation. So there is the potential we see another rally. We see a breakout out of this chart. But I don't think that Cronos will long-term outperform Ethereum. The upper ceiling is probably here, right, in Cronos relative to BNB. Another rally of 120, 125%. By that point, it's likely going to be too expensive to manipulate the price higher with short-term capital. By that time, Cronos is very likely going to do worse than Bitcoin, than Ethereum, than BNB, etc. Entering a short right now does make sense, but it's important to keep a tight stop loss. That in case we do see the secondary rally, that not all capital is lost, right? Because those moves to the upside happen very, very quickly with massive magnitudes. This here is my base case, but if we do see another rally, then shorting at levels like this is definitely reasonable as well. Cronos will not be the next Bitcoin or the next Ethereum simply because of its inflating nature, simply because the price lacks the market cap massively, and simply because the usage of the blockchain doesn't support that thesis. Now, let's talk about something a bit more fundamental here. Most people try to chase the pump, right? They try to find the next 5 or 10x meme coin, maybe 100x, maybe 1000x. And the reason why there are so many videos on YouTube about the next 100 or 1000x meme coin is because it sells very well. Most people just want to turn $100 into $10,000 or $1,000 into $100,000. Most people don't want to risk much and then get the very high asymmetric return. The problem with that thinking is that it's not very far away from just gambling, from just buying lottery tickets, swinging the fences, hoping for the home run. But let's say you do make the return with a lucky bet. How likely are you actually going to keep those wins. There are a lot of news articles where lottery winners spend all of their money and then get bankrupt. There's even aggregate articles here. The top 7 Florida lottery winners lost everything. And so really, the vast majority of people fails at finding the next SPX token or the next virtual token. Most people just burn their money, similar to buying lottery tickets. 1/3 of all lottery winners lose their money within 3 to 5 years. You might remember this guy, right? The Dogecoin millionaire. He even went on podcasts, for example here, with Graham Stephan, who's very conservative with investing. And yeah, the Dogecoin millionaire did not sell the top. Now I try to be different on this channel. I don't sell the next 100x meme coin. I think it's much better to try to find ways to compound the current wealth quickly but steadily. Really, once you get serious about investing, you don't need 100x or 1000x. It's not needed. Instead, what's better is to use systematic approaches that historically worked very, very well. For example, this here, right? I talked about this in the past on this channel. This is a backtest that I made for the best moving average for Bitcoin. If you bought and held Bitcoin, you would have gotten this white line over here. But if you timed the market using the 120-day simple moving average, you would have gotten 100% compounded every year. You're doubling your money every year, and this is absolutely massive over time. There's no need to gamble. We can simply just compound our money. Now this is just a backtest, but here is my own data. So if I just dollar cost average into Bitcoin, I would have gotten this line in gray. But because I timed the market with moving averages and with relative valuation bets, I got this line here in black. And I'm not just doing backtests or simulations of trading. I'm also not just showing my own data. I also started now trading for the community here. So the start was on the 10th of July, and so far we've got an annualized return of 79%. Very similar to what I got and what the backtest suggests as well. Fundamentally, being able to constantly compound capital over the long term is much more useful than trying to find the next lucky home run. You don't want to gamble. You don't want to end up buying scratch tickets. Instead, even though it's not sexy, it's really better to focus on the long term. It's really better to try to figure out where is there actually mispricing in the market. Where can we get constant alpha? Where can we actually invest larger amounts? Because that's the problem with those meme coin bets, right? We already get into this with the anticipation that there's a good chance that this goes to zero. Thus, we can't invest a lot of capital in this. We already have to psychologically diversify. We just bet a little bit of money hoping for this to do 100x. We can't really seriously invest. But once we reduce our volatility, once we use trading approaches that tend to appreciate relatively constantly, suddenly we can deploy much more capital as well. Because besides just the return here, right, the 79% APR, what I'm actually most proud of is the maximum drawdown of only 2.3%. It's about being able to have the best risk-adjusted return. The question should not be what's the next 100x meme coin. The question really should be, is there a way to become a better investor long term? And so I made actually a poll among the premium members of this channel. So that's over here. Has premium helped you improve as an investor? And 86% said yes. This is another number I'm very proud of. I'm quite sure that for most other memberships, this number would be much, much lower. Fundamentally, I think that any investing is a game of both luck, but also of skill. We have to maximize our expected return. We do not know what's going to happen in the future, but we can try to figure out what are the probabilities. What's really our risk versus return. And I've created a lot of content around this. How can we manage our risk? How can we maximize our return? How can we properly diversify? How can we find the right opportunities within crypto while not risking everything? In case you're familiar, it's a little bit like poker. As in, we do not know what the next card will be, but in general, we should bet more money when we've got a high chance of winning. We might not win with double aces, but the chance of winning is comparatively high. We should should, in most cases, bet a lot of money. And so feel free to check it out. It's currently $125 per month. If you do not like premium, just message me within the first week and I'll refund you 100%, no questions asked. But if you're willing to spend some time, if you're willing to watch some videos, learn about investing, I'm quite sure that the likelihood is very high that you're becoming a better investor as a result of joining premium. Now, a link to premium should pop up directly here on the screen. Just click on that. It will lead you to the website. If it's your very first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish this regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. See you next time on YouTube or see you in premium. Cheers.